Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Extensions in the Service Delivery Console webinar. So today we're going to be looking at the extensions area of the Service Delivery Console. If you're using desk phones with Surgery Connect, you'll be able to see a full list of all the phones within the practice in the extensions area in the Service Delivery Console. You can log in manually to any of the desk phones, and as a default, all handsets are available for any users to log into. You can also log in automatically if you're using the integration software, and details of how to set that up are available in the integration webinar. Remember, with Surgery Connect, all the internal short dial numbers are allocated to users rather than to individual desk phones. So that means that a user will need to log into a desk phone in order to receive calls on that phone. Now, we have completed a user login quick start guide, which is also available as part of the downloads on our training pages. So if you have any new starters and you want to give them some advice on logging in the morning, then that's available on the website as well for you. So during this session, we're going to be looking at accessing the Service Delivery Console, accessing the extensions area within the Service Delivery Console. We'll look at assigning users to specific handsets to make manual logging in easier. And we'll also look at assigning a generic user. Because the extension numbers go with people rather than with the phones, it would mean that a phone won't have its own extension number. So you can assign a generic user if you need a phone to have a number without a user logging in there. We'll also look very briefly at the configuration console, as once you've assigned that generic user and they're logged in, you can remove the login button then so that that phone stays logged in and nobody can log it out by accident there. So we're going to look at accessing the Service Delivery Console first. Now, if you're already logged into one of the other consoles, you can use the menu, which is the three lines just next to your initials in the top right-hand corner of any of the Surgery Connect consoles. You can then navigate to the Service Delivery Console directly from that menu. Alternatively, if you go back to the single sign-on screen, then you'll be able to access the Service Delivery Console directly through that website. When you're in the Service Delivery Console, up at the top, you'll have your 5 menus. So you've got your users, extensions, groups, calendars, and numbers. And obviously, we're going to visit the extensions area to see the list of all the phones within the practice. Now, the first time you access any of these areas, you'll have an introduction page that will show you how you can use Surgery Connect through that particular area. So we've got a little introduction page here for the extensions, just showing you what the phones can do there. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page on that introduction page, you'll see a manage button, and it will be the manage for whichever area that you're using within those menus. So this is our manage extensions button. If you click on that in the footer at the bottom of the page, that will then take you into the list for all the extensions that are installed for the practice. So within the table here, you'll have a little icon, so a little picture of the actual phone that you'll have installed in that location, and that will be the model of the Yealink handset that's installed. So all of our phones now are a Yealink T31 handset, although we have used T21s and T27s as well. All the information for those handsets is available on our training pages. Also in the table, you're going to have the name and location of the extension. So this is the room or the place that this phone is installed. If you're a multi-site, you'll also see the postcode of the site where the extension is installed. So if there's only the one site, obviously it will be the same postcode throughout that list. In the table then, you've also got a permitted users option. Now, when you're logging in manually to a desk phone and you use the login button, if there are over 23 users within the practice, it will give you a search facility where you can use the alphanumeric keys to type in the name of the user that you're looking for. If you're using the integration software, that will log you in automatically once that's all been downloaded and set up. So there's no need really to change the permitted users list. However, if you've got people logging in manually to phones, then it can be useful to reduce that list so that you can only see specific people when you actually click on the manual login button on the desk phone. So I'll show you how to change that list so that when you press the manual login button, you'll be able to see a list of users that can then use that extension and log in quickly and easily directly through the phone. Also in the column, if you're using the integration software, you will see the PC that phone is paired with. So as part of that integration process, you will link up the PC to the phone that's installed on the desk next to it. And once that's done, you'll see the PC name in this column on the extensions table here. Now ours says EMIS PC because it's EMIS integration that we've got on our training database. However, if it was System 1, you would still see the PC name here that the phone is paired with. Our final column has got the edit options for the table. So if you want to change the name or the permitted users for the phone, then you can use the blue pen. That will then give you access to anything that's in that row within that table. When the phones are first installed, we'll use the mass edit extension names just to make sure that the name and location matches where that phone is actually installed. But once you're up and running, it should just be the blue pen then to make any changes that you need for the physical phones on the desks. So what we're going to look at now is actually changing this permitted users list and assigning specific users to a particular handset. Now this only affects the manual login. If you're using the integration, it will override any permitted users on a handset and just log that user in to that phone through the integration software. So if we're going to assign a user to a particular phone or users, so you can put in a list of users as well so that you can have multiple people able to log in there. This is quite useful if you've got locums within the practice, because rather than having to search them for locum on the manual login on the phone, you could set it so that it's the GPs and locums that come up on the manual login list, and those will be the names that they will see when they press the login button on that particular phone. So to make the changes, we're just going to click on the blue pen in order to edit the required extension. That will then make anything in the table able to be edited here, so I can now change the name and location if I need to. I can add permitted users, or I can remove the link to a particular PC if I've linked the wrong phone up there. To select the permitted users, just click in the drop down in the users column. That will then give you a list of all the users that are currently set up for the practice. So just like our groups, you can either start typing into the box itself to bring up the names, or you can scroll through the list in order to select the names from the list. So I've added Jack, Donna and Rose here to the permitted users for consultation room 1, because they're the normal people that would use that particular phone. When you make any changes, if you click on the green tick, that will then save the changes, and you'll get a little success or failure message up at the top of the screen to tell you whether that extension has been updated. So you can now see that the column is updated, and in our permitted users, rather than all users, it will now have that we have 3 users that will show on the manual login list when you press the login button on the desk phone itself. If you deleted those 3 users, it would go back to all users, so you could then use that phone again in its true hot desk functionality there. Now you can also assign a generic user to a phone. So if you have a phone in a room where users aren't likely to log in, so this is normally something like a staff room or a meeting room, where you might want to ring the room and see if there's somebody in there, perhaps on a break, but you're not going to be ringing an individual user. You can assign a generic user to the phone and then log that user in so that the phone stays logged in and on that extension number that you've allocated. So in our list of available extensions here, we have a staff room phone. So I want that phone to have a number, but I don't want the users to have to log into it in order to allocate their user number to that phone. So I'm going to click on the blue pen as usual to edit the required extension. And then in our permitted users, I now have a button that says assign a generic user. So if I click on that button, it will create a user named after that particular phone. So it will call it the staff room user, and it will also set that user as the only permitted user on the phone. So that would mean that when you touch the login button on the phone, the only person that you will see on that phone will be the staff room user. You can then log that phone in and leave it logged in. That would be then your static extension on the extension number that the system has generated. So I'm going to click on assign generic user here. It will create the user and save the changes. So I've got my little success or failure message up at the top here, and we can see that the table has now changed, and we've now got our staff room user, which is a dummy user that's been created. Now that user is also created in the users list, and it will allocate an extension number. It's normally a 5-digit extension number. So if you wanted to change the extension number that's automatically allocated, if you scroll up to the top of the page, you can then go to the users list, which is where your dummy user will then have been created automatically. So if I click on users at the top of the service delivery console, that will then take us into our user table. I can then scroll down or search for the staff room user through the pages, and I can see now that we have the dummy user that's been created by the system here. Now you can see the extension number. It's well outside of our normal extension number range, so I'm going to change that number so it's an easier number for everybody to dial within the practice, just by clicking on the blue pen to edit the user details. I've changed that number now to extension number 290, so that would be the staff room phone number. And then anybody that needs anybody in the staff room can just dial 290, and whoever's in there can then answer that phone. As usual, click on the green tick to save your changes, and then you'll get the success or failure message up at the top of the screen. Now, when you're assigning a generic user, it's useful to remove the login button. So once the phones are installed and you've logged that user in by pressing on the manual login button and selecting the staff room user, you can remove the login button so the phone can't be logged out accidentally. To do that, you'll need to visit the configuration console. So you can either go to the menu, which is next to your initials, up at the top, just like we did before to get to the service delivery console. But this time, we're going to be accessing the configuration console. So remember, the configuration console is where you can change the default settings for anything that we set up in the service delivery console. You can also go back to the single sign-on page and go directly to the configuration console from that login page. Once in the configuration console, you'll need to select extensions from the menu on the left. And that will then give you a list of all the extensions that are set up for the practice. You can then either search or just scroll through the list of extensions. And when you find the one that you want to change, so here's our staff room extension here, I'm going to click on the pen icon at the bottom of that extension to then edit the default settings. Now on the general tab, there's nothing that you can change here other than the name of the phone, but you would do that through the service delivery console in the table. So if I click on the buttons menu up at the top, it will then take me into a button customization option for that particular phone. Now it will vary slightly depending on the model of handset that you've got here, whether it's a T27, T21 or T31. However, if you scroll down the screen, you can actually see the line and soft keys. So the line keys are the ones around the screens on the phone on the side. The soft keys are the ones underneath the screen. Now it's the line keys that we want to look at because that's where you would normally log into the handset. So if you've got a static handset in your staff room, you can log the phone in and then remove the login button so nobody can log out. To do that, just click in the drop down here next to login and change that to not set. That will then remove the login option from that particular phone once you click on save to make those changes. So make sure that you've logged into the generic extension first. You can then remove the login button so that nobody can log that phone out, and then it will always be that set extension that you've set in the user list there.